All right, so the pursuit of happiness, pointing true north. In this video, I'm going to be introducing you to our individual moral purpose here on Earth, and we're going to be talking about it in the guise of the moral compass, pointing true north, that is our happiness, that is our success. And in this video, I'm going to be introducing you to this topic of the moral compass. I'm going to be introducing you to the topic of the pursuit of happiness and how our individual moral purpose is intrinsically connected to this. And then over the course of the next couple of videos, I'm going to really flesh out this topic and make it more clear and understandable, because this topic is quite nuanced in a lot of ways. And this video is not going to get particularly nuanced. It's going to be only focusing on right and wrong and this actual pursuit to happiness. And so let's get into this by starting with a little bit of Aristotle, who says that eudaimonia is the only way to true happiness. The eudaimonia just means choosing to do good and choosing to live well. Doing and living well means acting with right reason in accordance with natural law. And you should know what acting in right reason in accordance with natural law means by now, because we've spent a long time, several videos now, talking about the meaning of rights versus wrongs. But so, just trying to flesh out this topic of eudaimonia. So for Aristotle, eudaimonia is the highest human good, the only human good that is desirable simply for its own sake, as in ends in itself rather than for the sake of something else or someone else, or as a means towards some other end. So really, whether starting a business, creating a product from scratch, doing the dishes, living life, going on dates, having a relationship, Aristotle's eudaimonia doesn't actually care about what you're doing. All that it cares is that whatever action that you're doing is right, so it's not an intrinsic wrong, it's not murdering, but also that you're doing it to the best of your ability. You're doing it as well as you possibly can in that present moment. Because choosing to do good, to do better in whatever you're doing, is our ultimate moral purpose here on Earth, to do it as best as we possibly can in the present moment. And that's fortunate. That's great that that's our individual moral purpose here on Earth, because that's also just so happens to be the very thing that's going to make you successful, healthy, wealthy, happy, and ultimately foster freedom for everybody. Because if you're doing something right, then you're doing it successfully, and that'll make you happy, because happiness and success are intrinsically connected. They're actually synonyms. Happiness and success are one in the same, because success actually is meant to make us happy. And with that being said, we have to understand that success isn't about it's not just about financial success. It's not just about dollars in your bank account. Your success is determined by how happy your success actually makes you. This is how much love you experience in the world. Remember, love is the expanding force for consciousness. So you can be successful in many multitudes of different ways. Financial success is just one of them. And so, further, both success and happiness are things that cannot be obtained in their totality, okay? They're pursued. This is where pursuit and purpose, those two words, are the same thing. And so that's what Thomas Jefferson meant when he wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's not the obtainment of happiness, it's the pursuit of happiness, and happiness can be replaced with success if you so choose. It can also be replaced with property as well. So, happiness is a state of being based in morality, virtue, and utility, not in acquisition. In other words, humanity achieves its peak actualization by living a good life full of positive actions. And whether those actions produce financial well-being is irrelevant. But if you so choose an action that causes financial gain, that's totally fine. And since we happen to exist in a capitalist society, why not do what'll make you financially successful? Because it doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as you're doing it to the best of your ability, and as long as what you're doing is not a wrong action. It's not murdering anybody, it's not raping anybody, it's not coercing anybody. And because there's no limit to how happy you can be in life, there's also no limit, and just like how there's also no limit to how successful you can be in life. Just ask Michael Jordan, just ask Warren Buffett, ask Elon Musk. There is no amount of success that will ever satisfy anybody, just like how there's no amount of success that will ever satisfy anybody either, because these are not things that can be obtained. They're things that are pursued. And so it's not really the goal to be successful or to be happy, but it's to constantly pursue success, to constantly pursue happiness in all areas of life, because that's what will get you closer in your pursuit of happiness, in your pursuit of success. This means that your individual moral purpose can be anything that you want it to be, and you will be happy with this purpose as long as you're constantly pursuing it, as long as you're doing the best that you can possibly do, as long as you're trying to meet particular standards. And so if you choose that your individual moral purpose is to do good and live well for no other reason than for the sake of happiness, then it doesn't really matter what you're doing, because as long as you're living your life with the intention of doing it well, doing it better than how you performed yesterday, and that's the only measurement that matters, then you're pursuing happiness and you're pursuing success. This pursuit can't reject, it doesn't reject circumstance. And so the point of that is that it accepts that the universe is an unjust, unfair, it's an unfair thing, okay? It takes into account your unfortunate lot in life. It accepts that all of those external events that occur in our lives are beyond our control. Okay, they exist outside of our control. The only thing that we can control are our actions in the real world and how we perform our actions in the real world. And thus, everything that's occurring outside of what we can control deserves none of our energy. This is a very Stoic mentality, and I love the Stoics simply because two of the best Stoics out there exemplify this, because one was an emperor of Rome. He had all of the freedom in the world. His name was Marcus Aurelius. And then you have another Stoic philosopher who was a slave. His name is Epictetus. And both of them exemplified this idea of accepting their lot in life, because both Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius didn't want to be what they were forced to be. You'd think that somebody would want to be emperor of Rome. That's not what Marcus Aurelius wanted. He wanted to be a philosopher. And it's obvious that Epictetus doesn't want to be a slave. He doesn't want to be forced into doing things that he doesn't want to do. But both of them accept their lot in life and choose to do whatever actions they do in their life to the best of their ability, as best they possibly can, and simply reject or not take as seriously the parts of the universe that they have no control over. And so, on top of this, this pursuit also accepts that we are responsible for our own actions, our own rights that we have. And through rigorous self-discipline and unabashed love, a wanting desire to pursue whatever we choose to pursue lies at the core of this philosophy. No one, no thing, no event can control your actions except for you, yourself. This means that you're not the victim in this philosophy, because the only thing that you're in control of that you have to overcome, you're not the victim in this philosophy because the only thing that you're in control of to overcome any external event is the only thing that you need to be in control of, and that's you. So ultimately, you could be the emperor of Rome or slave. It doesn't matter, because your happiness exists not in the realm of circumstance or chance, but it exists within how you act in the present moment. No one can take that away from you. Viktor Frankl proved that. I already read that quote for you guys. And so we're going to move on to part 2 of happiness, because I realized that was a much shorter video than I thought, and I'm trying to get through these foundational videos as quickly as possible so I can start talking about more interesting things, because there are more interesting things to talk about. And so, in the pursuit of happiness, part 2, we're going to start again by talking about eudaimonia. So eudaimonia is doing and living well, one choice at a time. The pursuit is a long road of choice after choice after choice after choice, and every single present moment is that choice, okay? So to be good is a choice. to be good at whatever you're doing in the present moment. So you're listening to me right now. How can you listen better? Are you paying attention right now? Are you taking notes? As you know, to be good means to do what is right, correct, and true. To choose to be a better person today than yesterday. To choose to sacrifice today for a better tomorrow. And if you do that every single day, what you'll find out is that you're actually working and creating a better tomorrow that you're probably never going to experience, because you're creating something for your family, for your kids, for people that are going to become after you're already gone. And so this is to choose to improve yourself as best you possibly can in the present moment, in as many present moments as you possibly can. So to be good means to be logically valid, because to be good is what makes us happy and successful. So if you don't choose to be good, then in the present moment, then what you choose is to be evil, to be wrong. And it is a binary choice. To be evil means to do what is wrong, incorrect, and logically invalid. To be evil is a choice, just like it is a choice to be good. So the evil aspect of this is to choose to not pay attention, to choose to not care, to choose to put off for tomorrow what you could have done today. It's to choose to stagnate in the present moment. It's to choose to do nothing as opposed to doing something. To be evil means to be logically invalid, because to be evil is what makes us depressed, sad, depraved, and less civilized, less intelligent, less able to adapt to our environment. And what makes us depressed also just so happens to make us unsuccessful, unhealthy, and ultimately fosters a need for authoritarian control for all. This is the binary choice, really, that I've been talking about since the natural law expressions video. This one choice expands our consciousness, and the other choice, so choosing to do good actually expands our consciousness. It's expanding with love, being open to whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to do the best that you can possibly do in that moment. Or it's to choose to be evil and to cut yourself off from the possibility of learning something new, from achieving something new, from doing something special, unique. So the choice is there. Are you going to expand with love and with consciousness, or are you going to choose to contract in fear? And this choice is there for us in every single moment of every single day. And so the first lie that I want to clarify about this is that I don't want you to think that what I'm saying is that doing right action is fun or good, or that it feels good all the time. And if you just keep doing good action, that's just going to start feeling good after a while. That is an illusion. It's untrue. Our happiness is not tied to the actions of doing good. Okay? Sometimes you don't want to wake up in the morning. You don't want to get out of bed when the alarm clock rings. You don't want to do that. Sometimes you're not going to be motivated to go to the gym. You're going to want to take a skip day. Sometimes you're not going to want to meditate, or you're not going to want to take the 3 freaking minutes to write a journal entry for that day. You're just not going to want to do that, and you're going to have to fight it, and it's not going to feel good while you're doing it. Okay? Really, sometimes you just want to be left alone. And so we have to acknowledge this question and answer this question emphatically. If being good sucks, if it's not enjoyable for us, then why be good? Okay. Well, I don't believe that the action of doing good and living well is what actually makes us feel happy. Okay? I believe that choosing to do good in spite of this ever-present choice to do evil is what makes us feel happy. It's choosing right over wrong that makes us feel happy. It's not the actual action of doing right action. It's choosing to do right action. So it's always about the capacity to choose. So there's a consent form here. You have to consent to this. We'll talk about that much later as we close this section. So you have to have the capacity to choose right action over wrong action. And it's the capacity to choose that not only makes us happy, but gives us meaning, and is what sustains us at our core being. Okay? In our determined universe, we're only given one singular choice: to choose between good and evil, right and wrong, love and fear, and it's the choice that offers us happiness, any happiness that we've ever experienced. And so choosing the harder good over the much easier evil is where our emotional energy should be focused, because that's the only thing that we have control over. This is every story that you've ever heard of, every book that you ever read, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Chronicles of Narnia. This is what they're talking about, this choice of overcoming evil. All right? It's defiance in the face of evil. And so every time you stand up and say no to doing wrong, you actually defy evil itself. This is the holy war, if you want to talk about a holy war in any sort of capacity that actually makes logical sense. And so you defy what's always going to be easier in favor of doing what's always going to be harder, simply because it's the right thing to do. That's an act of defiance against the ever-present immoral enemy of the good. And being right almost always will be harder than being wrong, okay? Being right will almost always be harder than being wrong, all right? And, just to prove this, we could just look at a simple mathematical formula. I love math because it's so logical and it helps us see these things very clearly. And so I could just ask myself, what's 64 times 11? No, I actually know that. 64 times 29. All right, I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't have that answer memorized. And so, in order for me to give you a right answer, I'm going to have to work exponentially harder than if I just decided to give you the wrong answer. So I could give you the wrong answer in a heartbeat. It's 11, okay? We all know that that's wrong, all right? The only way for me to give you a right answer is to either take out a calculator, that's going to take some time, even something as simple as that, it's going to take some time, or I'm going to have to actually do the multiplication with my in long form. Either way, you can see that the easier thing to do is always the wrong thing, and the harder thing to do is always the right thing. And it's so choosing to be evil is easier. This means that being good is always a challenge. Just think of any story that you've ever seen. It's always easier to just give Frodo to Saruman. It's always easier for Luke Skywalker to give in to the Empire and betray his friends, and he gets rewarded with the entire galaxy. That's the easier choice than combating this evil. It's always going to be that way. It's always going to be that way for even the simplest of good versus evil choices. Evil is always going to be easier. So this means that being good is always a challenge. It's always harder. And as your consciousness grows, the challenge will always grow with you. It's like an RPG game, like Morrowind, the Elder Scrolls. You're playing the game, and the first monsters that you meet are like giant rats, and they're super easy to kill. But they're still kind of hard to kill because you don't have great weaponry and you're not leveled up properly. But as you progress and level up, the game starts getting harder around you. And that's just like it is in reality, okay? And the point is that I just want to remind you about the idea of the pursuit. This is why it's a constant pursuit, because the game is always getting harder around you as your consciousness expands, as you get more leveled up. And so what's interesting about this is that you can never, and actually would never want, to completely overcome such a formidable, challenging, and motivating opponent. And so I'm going to introduce you to a motif, a representation of something that has helped me understand this topic much more clearly, and that is Satan, or Satan, which literally translates from Hebrew to English as adversary or the opponent. And so Satan is a purely evil identity that knows all of your weaknesses. It regularly utilizes your greatest weaknesses against you when you're at your most tired and weakest, because he's with you at all times. He's enticing you to quit, to give in to your base desires, and to not care anymore. This is humanity's opponent. This has nothing to do with God. Satan had really not much to do with God. He is the opponent of man, of mankind. And remember, this is all just metaphorical representation, okay? In this case, Satan, the opponent, represents that like little voice inside of our heads that always tries to get us to do things that we know we shouldn't do, because doing so, while rewarding in the short term, is never ever rewarding in the long term. It's always that little voice that says, you don't need to make your bed in the morning. Go eat that donut. It's okay. It's just one donut. And importantly, this is what we have to look at this opponent as, because what you're going to learn as we traverse through this moral compass is that evil is not necessarily a bad thing. And right here we have Satan as not necessarily an evil thing, because this root of all evil, Satan, is not a bad guy, because without him, there would be no happiness. We would not be able to be happy. A story would not be able to be enjoyable without an opponent. Think of Star Wars without the Empire. Think of Star Wars without Senator Palpatine. What is it? It's nothing. There's no story there. There'd be nothing to defy. There'd be nothing to overcome. There'd be no motivation to do anything. And that's what this is all about. Remember, motivation is all about emotion. E-motion, getting us in motion. Motive, cause, or able to cause motion. So think of working out the gym. You're doing bench press. And every time you do one more rep, you choose to do what is harder. Okay? So you choose to pursue happiness over laziness, success over quit. And while those last reps are always the hardest to overcome, then they're the toughest and scariest, especially when you're doing a bench press when you're lying on your back. Because when you put that weight back on the rack after going through those last couple of reps, when you weren't entirely sure that you were going to be able to get over those reps, you get this massive pump of energy, this adrenaline rush through your body. We could talk, and we're going to talk about the physiology of what that adrenaline rush is, okay, with the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. But for now, that's simply just happiness. That just felt good. It just felt good. It felt great that you pushed through something that you weren't entirely sure that you were able to do. And then you did it again and again and again. And then you're like, I can't believe I did 12 sets at 180 when I've never done that before. That feeling feels amazing. And that's the kind of feeling that you can get every time that you choose to do good over evil. Every time you overcome Satan himself over this opponent, okay? So that pump of energy that you get after a truly tough set, after pushing yourself past your limiting beliefs, that's the feeling of happiness. And you can only get that kind of happiness by pushing off the quit for just one more moment, and then another, and then another, and then another. And then here's where the evil comes in, where we can't just look at this thing as fundamentally flawed and wrong and something that we have to avoid at all costs, because inevitably, at some point, either mentally or physically, you're going to quit. You will quit. You have to quit. You're human. You're imperfect. You can't just bench press for the rest of your life, even if you're doing 5 pounds. Okay? And so, there's absolutely nothing wrong with failure. In fact, failure is a good thing. It's a great thing. We're going to talk about it in a couple of videos from now. Failure proves that you're working at or near your limit. And it's at your limit where we come into contact with the experience of this evil side. The side where it becomes domineering, overwhelming. It's like running into an enemy line with your swords blazing, and you're cutting through the enemy, and you're running ahead, and everyone, your entire army is behind you, and you just get completely overwhelmed. And like one of those shows or one of those video games where that happens. And, that's part of the process. You have to come into contact with something that's going to overwhelm you, that's going to eventually defeat you. And when you do, you come into contact with evil itself. You come into contact with your evil side. And you get to see how much capability you have in overcoming it by losing to it time and time and time again. And this is the duality of the human condition. We're all sinners. We're all failures. To sin just means to commit a wrong. And we commit wrongs all the time because we're imperfect. There's nothing wrong with being a sinner. There's nothing wrong with experiencing failure. It's part of being human. So you can't separate the sinner and the saint out of the human condition. We're both good and evil, and they're both necessary forces that we have to work with, okay? And so, since just because we're talking about the good on this aspect, when we move on to the next section later on, we're going to be talking about a whole lot of evil. We're going to be talking about a whole lot of shadow work. We're going to be talking about the work that you got to do in order to come into contact with this more evil side of yourself. And so, we'll talk about the benefits of failure and the weaknesses of being good a little bit later. But the point here that I'm trying to make is that we're simply given this one choice. And so, will you choose to do good or will you choose to do evil? And remember, the question isn't just asked once in a while or even once a day. It's asked every single moment, every single present moment of every single waking moment that you have. It starts the moment you wake up in the morning, and it doesn't end until you go back to unconscious sleep again at night. And so, what does this look like throughout our lives? It's just think about this as driving down the road. Are you going to give space to this person who's trying to merge into your lane, or are you going to allow your fragile ego to speed up and not allow this person to get over? Are you going to walk confidently with your back straight and your head held up high, or are you going to slouch in embarrassment for some reason? Are you going to choose to spend a little bit of time each day working on yourself, or are you going to take a skip day? Likewise for the gym. And when you're at the gym, we used that example already. Are you going to hit failure, or are you going to get kind of close to failure? Are you going to get maybe 2 or 3 reps before failure? If you're doing that, you might as well not go to the gym. The gym is all about those last couple of reps. The only reason to work out is for those last couple of reps. That's when your cells start to rip. That's when you experience what the evil sounds like. And it's where you experience the idea of overcoming that failure time and time again, proving to yourself physically and mentally that you can overcome this evil to a point. And so, every choice is a new opportunity to bring happiness to your life or to bring depression to your life. And remember, the point isn't to be anywhere near perfect. You just have to know that it's your choice and be willing to work at it. But note, this is the consent thing that I was talking about earlier, that we got to talk about, because if you stop people from being able to choose, if you stop people from being able to choose, then you actually stop people from being able to be happy. Because remember, it's not doing good that makes us happy. It's the choice. It's the capacity to choose good over evil that makes us happy. And so that means that you cannot force a single person to be good, because then you take away the one thing that can actually make them happy, the choice itself, the defiance, their choice to defy the evil. And that's actually where people get frustrated with this stuff, because they assume that anyone like myself who tells people rights from wrongs is trying to stop people from doing wrongs. I cannot do that because I consent to the idea that I can't coerce a darn person. I wouldn't want to coerce anybody because that is a wrong action. You have to choose this stuff on your own. All that I can do is talk about this stuff and try to make it interesting, which I hopefully do better than I think that I do. And again, it's always this capacity to choose. I'm trying to do better than what I did yesterday. And yesterday, I placed the bar extraordinarily low for me to overcome it today, because all I had to do was not say 16,000 times in this video, which I feel like I successfully did. And that means that I did better than yesterday. And that makes me feel pretty darn good, because that's all that matters. All right? And so, remember, I'm not trying to force anybody to do right action or wrong action. You have to make that commitment and overcome the evil on your own. And so I don't care what you choose with your life, because I know that you have to make the choice on your own in order for any of this stuff to work. In order for any of everything that I just said to work, you have to make these choices on your own. So as long as my rights are not being infringed upon, then I don't care what anyone else's choices are except for my own. And I'm just going to try to make it interesting to talk about this stuff and to show you that there's more to life than just simply crazy, chaotic meaningless nonsense. There's actually something here that we can focus on and work on and improve upon. And it's in this choice. And remember, it's the choice that brings us happiness. And with that choice, people can and should be allowed to choose evil. And we should allow them to choose evil without judgment. All that we can do is talk about this stuff. Allow people to choose their own evil ways if they so desire, because we don't understand their circumstances. We don't understand where they are in their lives. We'll never be able to understand that. And in knowing that, we have to allow them to find their own way. And I don't know of any other way to express this, that this is every individual's journey. And so, with that being said, just introducing you to this idea of evil, there's a lot more going on with evil than what I've even shared with you guys here today. In fact, the path to enlightenment is actually the descent into madness, the descent into your own evil side, because that's the part of us that we actually pretend doesn't exist. And, we do this for a lot of reasons, but primarily because we fear it, or we think that we're better than it, or we think that we don't need it. And none of that's the case. We have to understand this shadow side of us. We have to go into the depths and rescue our Father, as, so many stories have said, and how Jordan Peterson says it. But the point is, in conclusion, humans are both good and evil, and therefore we have to understand the shadowy evil side equally, if not more so, than our good side, because everyone always focuses on their good side and doesn't really focus on their evil side. We're going to talk about that much more later on. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the crisis of purpose that we're experiencing, that our society is experiencing today. And then we're going to talk about some other stuff about existentialism, nihilism, moral relativism in the next video as well. And I'm excited to talk about that stuff, so I'll see you in the next video.